Starbucks and Howard Schultz are getting hammered by the youngsters. What does this mean? Well, first, some quick context. Howard Schultz was considered a true darling of industry, widely respected for the unbelievable growth under his leadership the first time around at Starbucks. I mean, he was a media darling, a corporate darling. Everybody's like, Howard Schultz can flat out lead, spoke for crazy amounts of money, all the things. Enjoys retirement, gets called back in because Starbucks falters, comes back in and attempts to right the ship. And as he does, he gets hit with this new generation, Gen Z, more on that in a moment, who have been tempted and swayed by the concept of unions. Not a new thing in America. Well, he was in D.C. just last week getting grilled by senators about accusations that Starbucks, under his leadership, attempted to interfere with unionization and collective bargaining efforts at its stores. While he was CEO, he recently stepped down. I think he just said, I had it. I think he just said, you know what? I'm done. I don't need this. I'm Howard frickin' Schultz. I'm worth a lot of money. So he's done. No longer CEO. So, as I mentioned at the start of this, Schultz was a real darling of the media, other corporate leaders, and had a great image, a pristine image. And now the youngsters have taken his reputation out because now he's known as Mr. Anti-Union, which he is, and he should be. More on that in a moment. Well, where is America? I mean, what are the tea leaves? What are the tea leaves telling us? Well, America has changed its opinion over time about unions and large companies. Unions are now looked upon favorably. Large companies, bad, evil, big companies, bad. But we shop there. Well, Gen Z, people born from 1997 to 2012, are very, very open, even enthusiastic in some cases, about unions. But Schultz for years took the case at Starbucks that a Starbucks employee didn't need a union because they had better benefits than just about anybody else, and was very open about how great it was. Some of those things were average pay for a store employee is $17.50. Let me tell you something. That's a very high hourly wage for that type of retail service industry work. They got stock options, tuition assistance, Starbucks health insurance option for part-time workers was a big deal. And he talked about that. His statement in the hearings were, if you look at the 50s and 60s, unions were generally working on behalf of people in a company where those people had not been treated fairly. He's right. And went on to say, in some cases, they were nefarious acts by the employer taking advantage of the employee. And that's right. I will tell you, as a guy who is anti-union, that historically, at the inception of unions in this country, there were bad things happening to workers, and the intent of the unions was pure, dare I say, needed at that time. However, as with anything good, it can be used for bad. And I believe that this is what happens to anything. Politics gets involved in your local school, in your church, in your neighborhood association. Meaning, when people start trying to get political and get power, because that's what politics is, power, ruling, speaking on behalf of other people, when that enters into any, if you've ever been to a church business meeting where it got political, slam the door on your face. Neighborhood, I got involved in my neighborhood association several years ago when we lived in Atlanta. I lasted 2 meetings. Politics. politics has gotten involved in unions. Now, I'm going to tell you why unions aren't good for business and thus are not good for this economy, and that means they're not good for you. I'm going to tie this all in for you. But here's where America stands on this. A Gallup poll in August found that 71% of those surveyed approve of labor unions. The last time support for organized labor was that high was in 1965. However, only 16% said that they or someone in their household were part of a labor union. So they're saying, I'm in favor of it, but I'm not in one, and nobody I know is either, so I'm not sure they truly understand it. But thankfully, folks, I'm on the wall today. I'll tell you why unions are bad. 84% of respondents who said they had no connection to a union, just over half said they were not interested at all in joining a union. So that's good. Now, why are unions bad for workers, bad for business, bad for the economy, bad for you? Here we go. And your daddy and your mama may not have taught you this. So sit up straight, because this is common sense stuff, and you can wrestle with this. Disagree with me? Fine. But at least wrestle with it. Number one, all this representation that a union promises for the employer, because that's why it's attractive to young Gen Zers. That's why 71% of Americans will go, yeah, I'm in favor of unions because they fight for the little man. They fight for the worker. Okay, that's the whole pitch. They have our best interest in mind. Well, they're not just representing you because they love you. They're getting paid to do it. There are union dues. Do some homework on how those union dues get spent. On campaigns, on perks for union leaders, swanky offices. It's all politics, folks. Dig into this. Challenge me on this. So unions aren't free. They cost workers more money. And then unions almost always create tension between the workers and the company leadership. These things don't go amicably very often, and there's always tension. There's no true free flow of communication. It is always a negotiation, and that is never healthy. Third, unions don't always align with the wishes of the workers. They got rulers, baby. You could pay your dues and vote and be in a union, but guess what? At the end of the day, it's not your voice that is heard. You're told what to do, how to vote, and why. Your political leaders are making the decision. And because of this, the true individuality of the worker is squashed. You give it away when you become a part of a union. You're not making decisions that only you can make. You're a part of the bigger group. And then, because of these negotiations and increases, with all this stuff, companies have to raise their prices. And when companies raise their prices, this gets passed on to the customer. This affects the economy, and this affects you. Listen, we have too many laws on the books. There's too many good things. You're not going to get abused in today's world to the point that you need a union. You don't need them. We don't need them. Unions are about politics. Unions are about increasing prices. Unions are about tamping down a true capitalistic economy. You ought to be against them, and actively.